From the South Heidelberg Township Police Department. To my right is Berks County District Attorney John Adams. Seated is the Mayor of Robesonia, Randy Gardner. To my left is Harvey Marshall, the President of Borough Council for Robesonia as well. We're here today to talk about the tragic death of Mr. Hatt on August 26th of this year. I'm going to read a prepared statement, followed by Mr. Adams, and then Mayor Gardner will have some words as well. On Thursday, August 26th at 4:39 a.m., the South Heidelberg Township Police was dispatched to the intersection of Penn Avenue and Robinson Street in Robesonia for a report of a pedestrian struck by a motor vehicle. Upon arrival, the officers found the pedestrian Robert Lynn Hatt, a 67-year-old male from the borough of Robesonia, and his dog Scout lying in the middle of the intersection. Both were deceased. According to several witnesses who stopped at the scene, as well as video obtained, the witness was crossing Penn Avenue from the north side of the street to the south side of the street.
Welcome to Bixby.
When he appeared to trip and fall in a crosswalk. The video shows the male attempting to stand up with his dog still attached to a leash. The victim was then struck by a 2018 International Model 4300 SBA 4x2 straight body enclosed truck with a registered gross weight of 25,999 pounds. That truck was operated by a 55-year-old Todd Fry, F-R-E-Y, from Manchester, PA. Mr. Fry did not stop to check on the victim or render aid and continued driving east on Penn Avenue. A 19-year-old witness traveling directly behind Fry immediately stopped and pulled to the right side of the roadway after seeing the victim lying motionless in the street. A witness reported seeing the victim appear to be bent over just prior to being struck by Fry. The witness then immediately pulled over after he saw the victim lying motionless in the street after the box truck continued past the scene. The witness then called 911 to report the crash and was facing away from the scene when he reported hearing a car strike the victim lying in the street. He turned upon hearing the noise and observed a passenger car as it rolled and spun the victim past the intersection, essentially striking the victim a second time. That passenger car, a 2005 Buick sedan, was driven by a 71-year-old woman from Wilmsdorf Borough. A second witness, a 56-year-old male from Robesonia, then pulled to the right and rushed back to the first witness, who was on the phone with 911, when he observed a tanker truck drove over the victim for a third time, striking the victim a third time. A third witness, a 44-year-old male from Richland Borough, driving directly behind the tanker truck, saw the victim emerge from the rear tires of the tanker truck. That witness attempted to follow the tanker truck that did not stop at the scene, but he was not able to catch up to the truck in time and lost sight of that tanker truck. After several hours of interviewing witnesses at the scene and reviewing video surveillance from area businesses and residences, we were able to identify the company logo on the box truck and contacted that company, who in turn provided us with a phone number for Mr. Fry. At 2:20 that same day, approximately 10 hours after the crash, we had Mr. Fry, the driver of the box truck, return to the area. Mr. Fry told investigators that he saw some debris in the roadway and steered to avoid it, but denied striking anyone. The South Heidelberg Township Police Department then impounded Fry's truck and conducted a thorough forensic search of the exterior of the truck after being granted a search warrant. Hair and blood samples were recovered or collected from the truck. A level 1 motor vehicle examination was also conducted on the truck with finding no mechanical errors on the truck. An additional search warrant was applied for and granted to examine Fry's cell phone, and Fry's speed at the time of the impact was 40 miles per hour as recorded by the GPS in the cab of the truck. It should be noted that the speed limit in that section of Robesonia is 35 miles an hour. As a result of this investigation, Mr. Fry is charged with several statutes that are listed on the handout I provided, the most serious being accident involving death or personal injury, and in those there are subsections dealing with penalties that if the accident results in the death of a person, that creates the grading as a felony of the second degree. The driver of the Buick sedan, the second striking vehicle, was actually located and identified before we found Mr. Fry. due to family and coworkers calling police after seeing reports on local news media and social media about the crash and overhearing the driver state that she ran over a deer in Robesonia on her way to work. When interviewed at approximately 11:45 the morning of the crash, approximately 7 hours after the crash, she stated she saw two cars stopped on the right side of the road and steered left to avoid those two cars and then drove over something. When she looked in her mirror to see what she might have run over, she stated she thought she was a deer or a dog. An examination of the exterior of her car found blood in the front passenger wheel well, as well as blood below the front and rear passenger side doors. The driver did not stop or render aid and was charged with Pennsylvania statute of duty to give information and render aid. The third striking vehicle, the tanker truck that the witnesses saw at the scene, was hauling a full load of spring water and was operated by a 63-year-old male from Albertus. This third striking vehicle took us the most time to properly identify. We received over 50 tips via phone and Crime Alert Berks about possible trucks involved in this, and we spent a good deal of time tracking down all those different leads. That tanker truck had just been filled with a load of spring water from a Newmanstown, Pennsylvania facility before driving over the victim. The company involved, however, had 5 different trucks in the vicinity of the crash scene, at which time made it difficult to determine which driver was actually involved. But after extensive review of the digital logs from the spring fill site, backed up with handwritten logs and video surveillance from the same site, we were able to determine which specific truck was in the area at the time of the crash. That driver, once identified, was contacted and agreed to come back for an interview and fully cooperated with our investigators when he did arrive. It is our belief, after interviewing the driver of the tanker truck as well as video obtained from the intersection, that the tanker driver did not see the victim and did not realize that he made contact with them. This was due to a car directly in front of him slowing as it approached the scene, obstructing his line of sight and not making contact with the victim with the truck's front steering axle. The rear axles of the tanker, however, were confirmed to have run over the victim. It should be noted the tanker was hauling a load estimated to be 96,000 pounds, which would make it difficult for the driver in the cab to realize he made contact with the victim. Due to these facts, the driver of the tanker truck is not going to be charged with any violations. While this incident is an unimaginable tragedy for the Hatt family and the Robesonia community as a whole, it is compounded by the unfathomable fact that so many drivers did not stop at the scene or render aid. I would, however, like to point out that many people did do the right thing and immediately pulled over and attempted to help in any way possible. And the South Heidelberg Township would specifically like to thank J.C. Hoffa, who is present here today, the owner of Superior Gunsmithing in Robesonia, that provided the invaluable video surveillance that assisted in identifying the box truck so quickly. We would also like to thank Robesonia Pioneer Fire Chief Joshua Barbera and firefighter John Christian, who provided additional video from the fire station to help identify the box truck. In less than 12 hours after this incident, we were able to identify the first 2 drivers involved, examine both the first 2 vehicles, and to conduct a thorough forensic search of the underside of the truck. The South Heidelberg Township Police was assisted at the scene by the Robesonia Pioneer Hose Fire Department, paramedics from Western Berks Ambulance, and the Berks County Coroner's Office. With special thanks to District Attorney John Adams, his Forensic Service Unit, Detective Kyle Renshaw for assisting us with the examination of the truck, the South Heidelberg Township Roadmaster Bill Lanza, Dustin Hollinger, D.P. Randler, Eric Andrews from Blue Triton, Crash Reconstructionist South Heidelberg Officer Ron Mull, Criminal Investigator George Bell, who's here, Corporal Kyle Patton, and South Heidelberg Officers Jeb Cooper, Jeremy Lanza, Christopher Ramth, Brian Baxter, and Mark Ockenford, who conducted the initial investigation. I'm not going to take any questions. I'll let D.A. Adams speak for a few minutes, and then Mayor Gardner.
Thank you. Thank you, Leon. Very tragic. Very tragic. And first of all, I want to thank the South Heidelberg Police Department for a great job in putting this puzzle together. Clearly, they were aided by a lot of people from this great, great community. And that's what we need. We need that to happen. What happened here was the community came together, provided the police with additional information that allowed them to identify 3 vehicles that struck Mr. Hatt. Police cannot do it alone. And this community did what every community in our county needs to do and provide information to police so that we can solve the crimes that occur. As a former resident of this area, I'm not surprised. These are good people. They did the right thing, and I want to thank all of them. I want to thank the police for putting this all together because when news of this leaked out and we heard that multiple vehicles had struck this unfortunate pedestrian, that is a tragedy to occur right in the major intersection here in Robesonia, one that most everyone is very familiar with. And when we're putting this all together, I think we have to remember that anyone who drives a vehicle on our roadways has a duty to stop if they are involved in a motor vehicle accident. They must stop the vehicle at the scene of the accident or as close as possible and provide information and render aid. That is the law, and we intend to uphold the law as we prosecute these cases in the court system in our county. So in closing, this is an example, unfortunately, that I hope never occurs again. We have a number of cases that are pending in our courts as we speak, where people who were involved in an accident left the scene. The basic statute is, we can term it hit and run. The penalties, though, are very significant. If they are found guilty of the involved statutes, the penalty, if the person, we can prove that it resulted in the death of an individual, there's a mandatory minimum sentence of 3 years incarceration. So these are very serious crimes. We take these crimes very, they're very important. And we will not look away from prosecuting these cases to the fullest extent of the law, but it's easily avoidable. If you're in an accident, you need to stop. And again, in closing, I want to thank South Heidelberg Police Department for putting this all together, but most importantly, I want to thank this community for doing what they did. And it is exactly what I would expect of this community where I grew up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I knew Lynn Hatt. My sister was married to his brother Bill at one time, so my nieces were his nieces. And one of my nieces, Lynn's niece, Brooke, is here today. The Hatt family was just some of the nicest people you could ever want to meet. And I guess I'll never understand why bad things happen to good people. But as the chief pointed out, even though 3 people did the wrong thing, many more did the right thing. And you know, a lot of tips came in, some to me, which I passed on to the police, some directly to the police. J.C. Hoffa, who owns the Superior Gun Shop, when he heard about the accident, without being asked, he went to his shop and looked at the video and saw exactly what happened and took it right down to the police station, which was probably the biggest piece of evidence the police had. I'm proud of this community, proud to be the mayor of this community. So many people came together for this, just expressing their, first of all, their outrage at what happened, but their sympathy to the family. The community raised about $12,000 to help pay for the funeral expenses. I'd also like to thank the South Heidelberg Police, Chief Grimm, for the great job they did. They were on this thing right away, and they kept working on it. And you know, they got all the evidence together, and we really appreciate that. I think it validates our decision to go with South Heidelberg Police Department several years ago. We've been very happy with them. They're very responsive. They keep us informed, and we're so glad that we have them on board. Just again want to say thank you to this community, everybody that did the right thing, and it's really really appreciated by all of us.
If anybody has any questions, we'll be happy to try to answer them for you. Yes, Jim.
Chief, you, the DA, and everyone here is highlighting the people who helped in some capacity, whether it's people who stopped at the scene or businesses or people in the community who provided some video evidence and seemed to really, really help this case get closed, you know, relatively quickly. Is it fair to say that you received more help than you would have expected or hoped for?
We definitely received more help than we had hoped for. Especially, we had posted the video on your site, Reading Eagle, our social media about the tanker truck was involved, and that's when really the community kind of opened up and the tips kind of flowed in. And I'll say, and the DA alluded to this, everywhere we go, people ask me, what's the status of this case? You know, they can't believe that so many drivers struck this poor gentleman in the middle of Robesonia. So I think the nature of this crime, as the DA alluded to, this is a really good community. People help each other out. And for this to happen in this community was really, it's unfathomable that there were 3 people that didn't stop, 2 specifically that were citing. And that's what makes this kind of such a shocker, because this is a good community and people do help each other. And you see it all the time going up and down Penn Avenue. There's people, someone blows a tire, there's a car that stops to help that person. So this is what makes this such a strange, tragic event, that these people didn't stop.
And the DA's message was, if you're involved in an accident, stop at the scene and do whatever you can to render aid. I'm sure you shared that message that you want to share with the community as well.
Absolutely. So that is your duty, to stop and give aid. At the very least, if you can't stop, if there's no safe place to stop, I know we experience that on I-78 a lot with the horrific crashes we see up there all the time, and there may not be a safe spot to pull over right at that spot, but your duty is to, at the next possible safe place, pull over, contact the police, let them know what happened, and if you're in a position to help whatever happened, please do help.
John, I have a question. So the driver of the initial truck,
Yes,
facing multiple felony charges.
yes.
What sort of, I mean, can you estimate like what kind of, prison time, or what kind of situation that would?
Well, the one, without much background on the individual himself, if he is found involved in either of the charges, and there are 2 charges for basically leaving the scene of an accident. If he is found involved in the felony of the 3rd degree, he faces a mandatory minimum sentence of 90 days imprisonment and a $1,000 fine. If he is found involved in the felony 2, leaving the scene of an accident, where we would also have the burden of proof to prove that he died as a result of that truck hitting him, he would face a mandatory minimum of 3 years imprisonment and a $2,500 fine. So there are some significant penalties when you are involved in an accident, leave the scene, and someone is injured.
And again, I spoke with Chief Grimm about this. It would appear that that gentleman, that one who was charged with those multiple counts, that he had pretty much lied to the police when they interviewed him.
Yeah, I don't know all the details of the specific interview with him, but those, we will absolutely look into that. And that, that will potentially be additional evidence that we will utilize during the court proceedings in this case. Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay, we'll be here for a little bit if you think of anything before you leave, but we appreciate you all coming today, and thank you very much. And on behalf of the Hatt family, thank you again for your concern.
I went to school with a hat, too.
Well, there was 4 boys. There was, Bill was the oldest.